Hello and welcome everyone to Mentimeter's Learning and Development Open Forum. And here is our nice little icebreaker question. We all procrastinate. It's okay. What's your style? Ooh. If I'm at home, it's like constantly looking for snacks, like opening the refrigerator, knowing nothing's in there, closing it, walking away, coming back again, opening the refrigerator. It's my endless search for something fun to eat. Cool. Let's get this show on the road, everyone. So, yep, Learning and Development Open Forum, and we have a really beautiful set of people today that I really, really admire. So, Frida, let's start with you. If you can introduce yourself and why you're excited to be here.
So how can I not be to be able to talk about my favorite topics with some great people, of course. So I work within Vattenfall Learning and Development, focusing a lot on the intersection between people, technology, and the critical skills we need to enhance to be better suited to live in this world or something like that.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Saad.
Yeah, excited to be here to just connect. And it's not that often that you can take time out of your own calendars. So it's great. I look forward to learning as much as I hopefully can contribute. So I'm Saad. I am an executive presence coach and workshop trainer. So I help leaders in particular learn how to strategically influence and develop a business first mindset. So there's already a clue there as to what I do with L&D leaders, demonstrating value and impact. But I also work with engineers and technical leaders. And I can say that there's a lot of similarities between some of the challenges we face as specialist domain experts and how do we communicate the value of what we do to non-technical audiences effectively who are not familiar with the work that we do and why we do it. So excited to be here.
Lovely. And last but definitely not least, Joost.
Yeah, great to be here. So, I did a bit of everything in L&D, I would say. I started 10 years ago at Apple, doing training delivery for new store openings. Then spent some time at Uber and Klarna, where I led several teams, global L&D teams, focus on training design, delivery, and some operations as well. And as for the last 3 years, I'm doing freelance learning strategy consulting and instructional design for several companies, such as Air France KLM, currently doing some work for food banks in the Netherlands. And super excited to be here to nerd out on learning with you all. So
Nice. And I forgot to introduce the baby of the hour,
of
which is
course, yeah.
Brownie. She came along. She says she's really powered through with some opinions today, but she'll take it from laying down behind me. And today is very much like Mercury's in retrograde, some technical glitches are happening. So, and I forgot to introduce the purpose of this exact learning and development forum. And the reason why we do this is because we want to hear from our beautiful panel that really understands where we're at with learning development today, but also from you. And it's super important that we co-create this session together. So the way it will work is that you have answered some questions beforehand and we will walk through that. But just so you know that question answer will be open throughout and you will use the Mentimeter app for that. So not with live storm in the comments, but we will just ask you kindly to redirect it to the Q&A because at the end you get to upvote on what's really important. And so that making sure that we get to the questions that you all really want to hear from. Cool. So we have gathered some input from you. So some of you have already answered this questionnaire on ranking what is the most interesting topics, but I know some of you weren't able to. And now you have the chance to join in and rank these topics. And panel, what do you think will land on top?
I think AI, it's got to be in there, probably. It's such a popular topic now. How can you not discuss AI on an open forum like this?
Yeah, it probably touches upon everything as well.
Right.
So it's really in the intersection of the other ones as well.
It's getting up there. Saad, what do you think? Do you think it will?
I was gonna say brain-friendly learning only because that's what we default to. And I would challenge that we should try and think beyond just that as well. But yeah, it'd be good to talk about brain-friendly learning too.
Yeah, I just love that the leaders who teach and teachers who lead also was like up on top for a
Yeah.
while. I think that's an
Exactly.
interesting one.
I'm surprised proving what matters, like from measurement, didn't land as, oh, well, never mind.
You manifested it into existence, Lisa.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm so zap.
Mm.
Lovely.
And suddenly no one wants to talk about AI anymore.
Yeah, it's so
So-
crazy. Well, so
For a moment, I was worried that we would influence the audience, but the audience chooses makes their own decision, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good.
exactly. Might also like maybe it's also a sign of also like the oversaturation about AI, right? And it's like what more can we hear about it? And it's of course there's like endless things going on and everything's new, but I think it's also it speaks of what people are also craving that doesn't get to the front, like brain friendly learning, the measurement, leaders who teach and teachers who lead. Really lovely. Next. Okay, cool. So we will take from you, the audience, how many topics do you want to cover? So we can do 3 topics or 2. It just depends the depth in which you want the panel to give some insights and opinions about. Ooh, 3. Oh, it's like I don't know how I should not be embedding. Like okay, it looks like people really want the breadth of some topics today. It's very close though. And it is 3 topics. That's where we will land today. Okay, and our first topic was brain friendly, right? And then it was the proving and leaders who teach. All right. Okay, so the way this will work, there will be some interactive slides because, hey, we wouldn't be Mentimeter without it. And we will talk as a panel, but of course, please put your input in as the audience because that informs us on how to direct a conversation. Great. Brain-friendly learning that sticks. All right, what's our first slide here? Where could you swap a 30-slide brief for 3 questions? Interesting. So, okay. I don't know how most of you have worked, but there's times where you're like, wow, there's a lot of needs and considerations and requests on what people are asking. But maybe like what are like the strongest 3 things that you feel like will really take you far and what you're building or designing? Saad, do you have an opinion there?
Yeah, I was going to say everywhere as well, but you know, as a coach and as someone who ran team meetings, I had a global team of 200 people and I was in a remote environment. So the only thing I could do, and when I was with my team and when I coach, is what's the single most powerful question you could ask that's going to shift the room, the direction in the room. And sometimes it's the unsaid, the elephant in the room. So we were thinking about expanding into China, and it was a very tough market to crack. And so the question I asked is, what are we good at now that can easily be extended into China, and what are we not so good at? And just like simple framing that question, I could have had 30 slides on market context and research data and, you know, competitor analysis. But I think the power of a question, I think, could really get people, provokes that thought process, I think.
Absolutely. Joost or Frida, do you have any sort of like experience here on when it seems to be a bit of like information overload, and how have you worked with like simplifying it to really get what you need?
Yeah, just what I'm thinking of is that what I hate almost more than a 30-slide brief with a lot of text is the one-pager where you're going to like pull as much information as possible. Especially management teams seem to be very fond of the idea that all the information needed to understand the topic needs to be put into one slide, for example. And not brain friendly or not like building a context and so on. But of course, the 30-slide brief is seldom the best case either. So the question part, for example, just starting with the question like, what are your current feelings about this when I say this topic, or what are you feeling about it at the moment? Answer just with an emoji or a word or something like that to start start a conversation that way.
Right? Like really like lower that barrier of entry for people to feel like they
Yeah.
can participate or have some sort of like reaction to it.
Yeah.
Nice. Joost.
Yeah, and I think it's so recognizable, right? When you get a training request and you get all this information sent by your stakeholder, like, oh, like the learner needs to know this and that and that and that. And it's interesting that this question talks about 3 questions, because 3 questions I always like to ask is, when working on a training request, like, what's the goal that we have in mind? I think that's one that's often skipped actually when we talk about training and training design. Then indeed, what do people have to do to reach that goal? So then we're more talking about behavior. And then the third one that I found very interesting, where you get a lot of info, but also where you need to dig a little bit deeper sometimes, is why aren't people doing it? So you know what you want people to do, right? But why aren't they doing it? And I think an interesting job for us in L&D is to really get in the role of like, okay, is it really training that is necessary, or are there other factors why people aren't doing it? Like, is there psychological safety, for example? Are there leaders in the company who say the opposite that you want to teach in your training session? And I think those 3 questions, can help a lot with getting to the core of the issue.
I'm like super obsessed lately with, it's like such a nerd down L&D thing where I heard Julie Dirksen quote Kathy Moore, like, but it was about like what system are people actually being rewarded for? So as much as you want them to do a certain behavior, or like if it's like increased quality time of customers, but what they're really rewarded for is like how many customers they get through, they're really not going to like work towards the thing that doesn't reward them. And I think that's so interesting as well, like thinking from like a brain friendly or a brain aspect of how things are designed and the system in which it lays in. That's been like my number one question that I've been asking myself, like, am I setting up for a training or something that's happening that is built in a like systemically way that would never reward it? So it makes it like a barrier that I also have to realize that it exists. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Next question. What are the emotionally resonant moments in learning, and how do we elevate them? Ooh. I'm like, I want to answer. One thing
Go for it.
I really realized that that like really resonated with me was really like when someone actually outlined in their program was like, oh, this is the area, like this is the dip in this program where you're gonna hate it. Like this is an area where you're gonna lose motivation and it's gonna feel really hard. But don't worry because there's other and I was like, oh, that like really resonate because like it's like this assumption that all parts of it are really fun, or they're all parts of it that are not going to challenge you. And I thought that was really like interesting to use like the power of like there's parts where you can feel validated that you don't like this. But what is some of your experiences when it comes to emotionally resonant moments in learning?
I think really the uncomfortable moments as well, right? Really where I see one of the participants indeed on the Menti saying like real-time scenario. So if in a scenario you try something and you fail, I think for me personally, when I was a trainer at Apple, the things that I learned the most from were where I came into situations when I was delivering training and where I did something that I got feedback on, right? On things that I had to do differently. And in the moment, it feels very uncomfortable because you're in front of a group of 50 people. There was a really experienced trainer observing me and giving me feedback afterwards that I truly admired. And then I would say, especially as a beginning trainer, I really wanted to get that positive feedback, right? Like, hey, yo, she did great. It was awesome. So in the first instance, that's not so nice to hear, but it's still like I can still remember the situation, what it was about. And every time in front of a group, I think about that specific piece of feedback. So yeah, disappointment or uncomfortability is, yeah, I'm not sure if that's a technical emotion, but more like a feeling. that is really something that, at least for me, where learning takes place a lot.
Frida, it looks like you were about to say something.
No, I'm just thinking and also reading the comments. It's so interesting to see, and thinking a bit. It depends on if you take the teacher or the learner perspective, of course, in terms of emotion and also the learning design. Somehow, are we like designing for people to connect to the topic that we are working with, for example, and how is that playing out? I think some of the comments were really about when people understand like the deeper meaning of something. It's probably connected to the classic aha moment, you seeing the glitter in the eyes or whatever. When something, maybe you're even forced to that training by your manager or whatever, but when you see that someone, it really the insight falls down, for example, and yeah, it's definitely a component to bring into your learning design, I would say.
I would agree with that. I think you know, when you take something that's abstract in someone's mind and you make it concrete, with a super like referencing code, and it's a practical application, they can finally say, I can do this. I understand this. And I often say to people, the aha moment doesn't have to be huge. You know, it could be just a mere realization about yourself, a self-awareness. Because I teach strategic influencing and executive presence, one of my best tools is record and review. So I say, let's do a case study. Let's get up and present and talk to me how you would talk about your work. Maybe you're an engineer. I work with learning leaders. Talk to me about your work and your leadership development program. How would you pitch this if you had 5 minutes to a VP of strategy? And you know, you record it with them in a safe space, and then and they watch it back, and you can see they're taking notes. That's, for me, is such an emotional moment, because you've already created a safe space. They get that self-awareness, and that blind spot finally clicks into place. That, wow, I didn't know. I've had people, when they do a recording review, say, oh, I didn't know I came across in that kind of harsh kind of way, and I didn't realize that I rushed to execution a lot in my speech when I talk, and it's very monotone, and there's so many self-reflections that come out. So I would say, when we take the abstract into concrete, and a technique that I think we need to use a lot more of is a form of recording review. And how we elevate, I think, constant reflection about what works, speaking to people from the sessions, getting that feedback, you know, what really resonated with you. Sometimes I find the top 3 takeaways that I wrote down are nothing to do with the top 3 takeaways that my participants took away. So I value a lot more what they want, what they see, because they see it with a different lens. So I'm building on what colleagues said. I think those are some of the things that I would think would be emotionally resonant.
Nice, thank you, and totally agree. Like, so this next slide is like, which small habit will you add next? So which of these habits impact most on retention and your experience? Spacing, nudges, micro practice, others? What do you think, Joost, will land at the top?
Oh, it's very dangerous to guess, right? In these sessions,
Right.
before. But I would go. I would go for micro practice for sure. Yeah, actually trying things. Yeah.
Saad, what's your bet?
Yeah, I was going to say micro practice, because it links squarely with what I said before around record and review and etc. It depends, because if you're a learning specialist, you might go with spacing. If you're a behavioral person, you'll go with nudges. And if you're more of a practitioner, anti-theory kind of person, then you might go with micro practice. But there you go.
Okay, so
right.
sorry, Frida. But interesting. Really, really, like, overwhelmingly micro practices. And I think it's like, I mean, that maybe speaks more of also I mean, I know in the flow of work is getting a little bit of like pushback these days as like wording, but it is like in the moment and like when you need it, you can probably much work with like a micro practice. Okay, so keeping in mind that we have 2 more topics, I'm going to move us along into the next topic, which is the design for impact and measure from day one. Proving what matters, design for impact and measuring from day one. All right, let's head into that slide for all of you to contribute to. What is an example of an outcome that is important to move and how can it be measured? Oh, okay, interesting. What do you set up from day one? And just when we were talking, I think this was like a really interesting take that you had on sometimes why this is not done.
Yeah, yeah. I think measurement is so important in our work, yet we do it way too little. And I think we all measure the trainer happiness score, as I call it, right? Or training happiness score. Like how happy do we feel about the training? But yeah, to put it super bluntly, at that point for a business, you're still hosting something that costs money, right?
Mm,
And this is a little bit black of white. I do realize that. But I think the challenge for us in L&D is to really focus on like what is the behavior outcome that we want to see, right? And ultimately, how does that translate to business results? So indeed, what is an example of an outcome that is important to move? Like, look, I did a lot of training for customer support, right? And a goal like this can be as simple as, let's take active listening as an example, right? Where you clearly define what does active listening mean, right? Like, I listen to what is said, I summarize what the customer says, I ask a follow-up question. So if that is your behavioral goal, it is also good from the beginning to talk with your stakeholder about, okay, but how are we going to measure that? And that would work different from company to company, right? Like in support, you often have like quality scores that actually measure that and whole teams who observe conversations. But it can also be anecdotal, right? Like just talking to a manager or talking to teams. And do you see this behavior changed after the training?
I think one spicy thing that I'm just going to pull out here that you said that was super interesting is also the tendency is that we're scared to see that
Oh,
if
yeah.
something have failed, or
Yeah.
scared to see that that's a result of the work that we did maybe didn't land in the way. And I can speak to that sometimes. I mean, in Mentimeter, you have the ability to ask questions on like, where are you now with your skill sets? And at the very end, then you're like, where are your skills after you have done this? I'm always like, I'm so scared. What if I taught somebody nothing? But I mean, you need to know that as what you're doing in your profession, how to get better. But Saad, you
Yeah.
had something also very interesting when it comes to like business impact
Oh
and
yes.
80/20ing how you frame it.
Yeah, I mean, I run the L&D means business learning cluster at L&D Shakers, which is a really cool professional community for learning professionals. And we talk a lot about business impact and being a business first. So we talk a lot about Kirkpatrick. Other than what Joe said, where we are a little too, we take little attention, we're a little too late. So I think on Kirkpatrick, right, which is a very popular model, I think level 4, which is all about results, should be level 0.
Yes.
Right? Why is results right at the end? Is because we talk about, and then this concept of learning transfer. So it implies that you learn first and you transfer it somewhere. I feel, and when I used to be in corporate learning, developing leadership development programs, and then I went on to the business side, I was so shocked by the whole thing. We start with the business objective. So we got a training for the procurement team, which said, oh, they're not as accountable. What we realized was a training on accountability was actually a training on how to deal with level 2 inquiries from customers, which are more complex than level 1. And what the team were doing was that they were dealing with level 1 inquiries, which are very basic, but were ignoring level 2 just because they didn't have any of the training. So what the business metric becomes, and we start with that level 4 result, but become level 0. We start with that. And so what we want to see is more and more level 2 complex inquiries being resolved rather than just level 1. And so we shift it from very vague accountability kind of, and let's see how much we can improve in accountability and confidence and how happy were we and satisfied in NPS. Those are really great things. But I convinced the business, and with my learning hat on and being that sort of soft influence and a consultant to the business, to say, I'm not an L&D professional. I'm a business professional who happens to have a learning background. And I think, based on what you've said, it's level 2 inquiry. So we did that. My other hot take on this is that I don't think there is learning ROI. It's a challenge. I think there's only business. I think there's only business ROI. Yeah, that's what I personally. There is no learning there's no dashboard for learning. We need a business dashboard, which is I now need to see level 2 inquiries go up. I now need to see sales data to see conversion go up because we train our salespeople on how to handle objections, but we don't have access to some of that business data, unfortunately. So we need to campaign to get access to that dashboard.
Ooh, spicy takes. Yes, Frida, please keep on coming.
No, but I would pretty much agree what Saad just said, that I do think when it comes to learning metrics that we tend to like measure what we can measure because that's the data that we have, instead of like asking the question, why are we doing this from the beginning? So the full like ROI part should come in, like, should we even do a learning from the start, of course, but if we then somehow decide that learning could be the answer to the challenge or like the need that the business have, then the outcome should be measured from what is actually happening on the other side of your learning initiative. So just concrete example, if we touch upon the AI topic anyways, if we teach AI, somehow there is like, but it's because we want to drive adoption of our products, and then we want to understand, does people really value the project, and does it improve their work, and so on. Or for example, if we do some kind of technical training connected to increasing internal mobility and having like managers take a cultural approach on that, we want to work more towards career transitions between roles and so on, then the metric would be, is that actually happening? Do we have people moving roles and so on, and looking at that data, and is managers starting to collaborate? So I also have a hard time finding the actual learning metrics being the important ones.
Oof, I love that. Our next question, what's your smallest 30-day test of learning to performance? So what's a tiny experiment that you linked to learning to performance in 30 days? I know I've definitely been guilty of thinking like, but behavior change takes over time and it's hard to see immediately. But I mean, there's something has to happen, like even if it's tiny. Any of you have a really good experience or suggestion of how to see this within 30 days?
Yeah, when I do my time at Klarna, we basically did this all the time. Not that we always saw success all the time, but we tried it. So the way that worked was like basically my team had continuous access to like data from support staff, right? And we have quality metrics, we have customer satisfaction metrics, and we can also deep dive in those. So I earlier gave the example of like active listening, right? So basically what we try to do is identify the pain point in a certain market, right? Like what specific element in a customer interaction is rated low, either by the customer itself or by our quality teams. And then try to target a learning solution, a continuous learning solution for that specific market. And then we always indeed in 30 days looked at the initial results of that. Does that mean that you always see result? No. Does it mean that you can fully isolate the result of your training solution on that metric? Of course not, because there are so many other things that come into play. But it does give a very good indication if you're on the right track. So I would say, to me, the danger in taking too long to measure the impact of your learning solution is that you're not going to do it anyway. Because the longer you wait, the more other factors come into play that also impact that specific metric. And there's no business team on the world that can fully impact their impact or on the specific metric you're trying to influence. So I think it's very good to make it a habit to always try in 30, 60, 90 days to do some sort of measurement. And also be okay with, okay, this may not be fully because of our training solution. It may be due to other factors as well.
Nice. We're moving on. I mean, we only have about a minute left in this particular topic, but was there something else you wanted added in terms of just like your quick sort of like one sentence takeaway about thinking about metrics, Frida and Saad?
No, so looking at the performance part, I think that if it's a skills-based training, you always should see like performance after 30 days, like can you do it or can you not do it, for example, in terms of like if you are learning a new programming language or yeah,
Mhm.
these kind of things. So it's quite.
Mm.
Yeah, I would just say to build on that, just mix self-assessment of self-ratings from participants with actual business data, just try and triangulate it and not rely overly on self-assessments, which is what I see as sometimes L&D colleagues, we may default to that. But if you can somehow get access to business data, that would be good. And I think it links to the stakeholder question next into how we can go about doing that.
Nice. Unfortunately, we will go into the other topic, which will skip the stakeholder question, but hopefully it will come up again during our Q&A. So those of you who wanted to hear about stakeholders, please put it in the Q&A. But we're leading into our third topic, which is leaders who teach and teachers who lead, which is so interesting, right? Especially those with the teaching background. So which format builds real skill? How much does a format impact learning? Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Coaching, cohort learning, apprenticeship, stretch projects. Frida, you work in a very, very large organization. And I'm sure like formats have to come in all different flavors, but is there, I mean, and you also have like an amazing background and many different avenues. What speaks to you here?
Yeah, so I'm really fond of stretch projects because that's
Mm.
really when you get learning into the real work, and that's so much connected to also the topic here, teachers who lead and leaders who teach somehow, because by your leadership style and your attitude towards your employees and so on, you can so much influence if they are like learning on the job or not by this approach. I like the other ones as well, but that's the one that is really where you can see effect if you have the right leadership behind it, I would say.
I totally agree. Joost or Saad, any opinions here?
Yeah, there are no right or wrong answers here. I would say I agree with all four of them. I would say I would also go with stretch projects. Although I would say it hugely depends on the culture of the company you're in.
Yeah.
So if you are in a very high-paced company where there is room to fail, right, and try things, definitely stretch projects. If you're in a bit more of a traditional organization, I would not have stretch project as my number one.
But I think that's so important, just as you say, because also traditional organization, there are like, if there are no room in your organization to fail or take up, then you have a cultural problem, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would say because there's hybrid versions as well. I would have said coaching or peer coaching especially. I think people love to hear when I just finished up a program on strategic influencing. We brought 15 people together and we all had 10 minutes, 15 minutes to share their challenge. What they love is hearing how others will tackle the same challenges as them. And they come up with really practical tips. They also build their coaching capability as well, I think, because the whole purpose is you would ask questions first rather than advising. So we're kind of doing a dual thing. And so I think I would go with coaching because I think it deals with some of that mindset behavior that is underlying to the performance. The performance to me is a symptom of how we think and believe, or what we believe as individuals. That can influence what projects, how accountable we feel, and what we do and how we communicate with people. And so that's why I would say coaching.
Yeah, and I also think it depends a bit on what do we mean with a real skill, for example, because when in terms of leadership, for example, I think that coaching is a very effective tool. But if it's in terms of like project management, I think like taking on this stretch project and being more hands-on with and so on would be. So I guess it also depends on what kind of skill.
Well, it leads us into the next question. Which skills have you upskilled and what was the impact? I mean, I think this is like it can be a hard question because it's like under what context. But I think maybe more of like a follow-up here, like what's sort of like an underrated skill that you think is really important when it comes to reaching impact? Saad, you kind of deal with a lot of like these like leadership sort of areas. Like what's kind of like an underrated area that people can really have a lot of impact through?
Well, I would say one of the biggest challenges when I work with leaders is influencing. I think we early on in our careers as professionals, we try to prove our worth. We try to become really professional, become pre-prepared, and so on. I think we like to measure our results by what we deliver. But
Mm,
as we increasingly become a more and more, when we're in a leadership position where we don't have direct reports, I mean, maybe influencing other stakeholders, and L&D, we're squarely in that space, right? We have to get results through other people. We have to influence without authority. So influencing becomes really hard. We don't know how to work in a political environment where there's different personalities. That's an underrated or underdeveloped skill. So, for example, you know, if we can see a solution, one of the 7 tactics of influencing that I talk about is how do we do back channeling without feeling like it's dirty, and how do we test the waters and plant a seed for an idea, just to test it to see how people will respond and react before we get to a formal forum or formal meeting. And it's really, really hard, you know, for leaders to do that. The other challenge I think leaders face when we get more and more senior is having a multidisciplinary team. So we're line managing people that perhaps, you know, we don't have the domain subject matter expertise in. So now it's all about feeling confident to ask the right questions to influence. So I think for me, it's about influencing that political astuteness and navigating that tricky landscape, because a lot of it's invisible, highly psychological, and we're not trained in that way often.
so interesting about like the invisibility. And I see here quite a lot from the responses about soft skills. I'm just curious, I mean, no shame here, soft skills, transferable skills, durable skills. Like what is your, Frida, like what is your thoughts here on like when you see someone put soft skills and like the impact of it?
Yeah, so I have one example that's from a long back in my career, but I worked as a teacher, and we worked with like soft skills, how to work with the metacognition around it, because when it comes to like hard skills, we just assume that people are going to learn if they get the chance to train on them and so on. But with soft skills, we just expect them to be there somehow. Can you just like take responsibility? Why aren't you brave enough? Or this is like a task where we need to collaborate and so on. And one skill in connection to that, and because I do think it's really essential to get the other things to work as well, is like then the metacognition. That how can we like make it more visible? How can we visualize the soft skills and the impact that it has? So the skill of metacognition is key to really, and visualization is key to really also lift and give soft skills the space that it needs to have, and the impact it can make, I would say.
I'm definitely taking metacognition with me. Nice. So to avoid a monologue, what needs to be the biggest fix? So I guess speaking as a teacher, like it's more of not just like talking at people, but is it formats, cadence, feedback loops, nothing, going from nothing to everything? And yeah, like I mean, leaders who teach and teachers who lead, like what do you feel like is like a power skill when you're really trying to teach someone? Joost.
Um,
And it doesn't
yeah,
have to be these 3 either.
yeah, no. So on the previous slides, one of the participants I saw like emotional intelligence, and I think for me that is a really important one. One example comes to mind, and then I'm also thinking a bit more towards the empathy side. One example that comes to mind is a while ago I was hosting a trainer session for a group of people that were soon to deliver a training in a change project, and a few leaders came in actually to the session. And at the start of the session, me and my co-trainer asked, like, how confident do you feel to deliver this training session to, pretty large audience that they would train for? And we went around the room, and a lot of people said, well, yeah, 1, 2, maybe 3. And one of the leaders answered that question as well and said like, hey, I think it's a 10 because we have a great team here and we're super prepared for this and you're all gonna rock this. Another leader also joined the session and said, well, yeah, to be honest, the 2, like I'm pretty involved in the project, but now I'm also asked to deliver training. And to be honest, I'm a little bit, nervous for that. And the difference in like the body language that you saw from the people in that room from those 2 responses and the difference in, that's the interpretation, but authenticity, right? And understanding with what people are, with what feeling people are in that room was just huge. So I think that's super important for leaders as well if you want to teach something.
Absolutely. Okay, unfortunately, that is the last segment in terms of topic. And we're now heading into question and answer. So if you haven't had an opportunity, please put in your question, upvote what's in there. Take a look on things that you really would like to hear from the panel. But yes, sorry, I didn't get to like transition out of the emotional intelligence, but I totally agree. And a book that I recently read that was actually like really powerful in terms of like understanding and was called Validation by Caroline Fleck. It's very, very interesting because like you really associate validation with like praise, but it's so much about how you recognize someone else's experience, which can be like conflated a lot with like empathy, but it's also like you sharing like also part of like certain situations that make people feel safe and comfortable and validating like they oh, I totally understand you could be frustrated in the situation. It's just like that peer acknowledgement. And I think that's like a really interesting way to see also emotional intelligence is how are you validating someone else's experience.
I would also say along with emotional intelligence is emotional investment. So like knowing
Yes.
how much of your energy and time do you want to give to something. You have to learn to pick our battles. It's a bit like the let them theory, you know. We have to. I find a lot of middle managers, they get very passionate and want to see something through, and people act on their ideas. But our job is to bring something to someone's attention, leave it on the table, and walk away. You know, especially if we are not the decision makers. So long as we've done that, I think we're okay. And the mind is a very sensitive thing nowadays. I don't cloud and let my mind get polluted with negativity and other people's views. It's took me a long time to get to that stage. That two thing, picking and choosing what we want to be emotional and passionate about is key.
Yeah, right. Like the intentionality. All right, let's pop open this Q&A and see what we've got. Okay, in terms of formats that build real skill, can you give some creative examples to manufacture these hands-on opportunities within the training environment? Mock presentation, case studies. Okay, I need to read that question again for myself. In terms of formats that build real skill, can you give some creative examples to manufacture these hands-on opportunities within training environments? Anyone can pop in with their top answer here.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I 100% understand the questions correctly, but one format that we're using a lot is like the boot camp format somehow, that when you design a training initiative that the presentation part is mainly 30 minutes or something like that in the beginning, and then going very much into actually doing in terms of case related to the work that you do and so on, and actually provide time to work with it, and preferably also in groups together with other people, for example.
I could give a couple transferable, hopefully, hands-on activities. So if you want to teach someone how to communicate in a really succinct way, I call it the WhatsApp exercise. Firstly, I ask them to, on a Miro board or whatever, or in person, write down what you like to say, the message you like to communicate. And often it's quite long and unfiltered. And then I will say, okay, open up your WhatsApp. And in WhatsApp, you can actually search for yourself. You can find yourself. And it's like your own notice, your own board. So now pretend like as if you were going to speak to that person. It's a bit like having a tweet with 140 characters. Try to condense it and give them 7 minutes. And it's really challenging, but really enlightening. And you will find that they're often very technical, very long, you know, but condensing it is really cool. So that's a succinct communication, but I'm sure you could use WhatsApp for other things. The other example, I'll go back to the earlier one that I shared, where we wanted to help people deal with so customer support teams deal with queries where customers send them and they're very lacking information, like bits of information come in dribs and drabs, and customer support staff can get quite frustrated. So what we did was we to mimic that and how they could prioritize urgency versus business impact. We call it a prioritization game. So we give them five hypothetical scenarios, and we use a cool radar game to kind of position them. What was really interesting, to mimic the real world scenarios, a bit like a simulation, we said, here's half of the information of 5 queries, and then here's a QR code for each one. Go on your phone and use the QR code to reveal the next bit of customer information, right? The query. So we use the QR codes to mimic an environment where information comes in dribs and drabs. So that's a really cool, interactive, hands-on way, rather than saying, how would you respond to this email? Which is, okay, it's practical, but to say, here's half of an email, and here's a QR code, which reveals the other half. Now work in groups, figure out how you would respond. And by the way, you got 10 minutes to do it. I think timing is a really cool technique that we don't use enough of. So those are just 2 examples, but I'm sure that there's so many out there.
Nice. I'm going to go to the next question. What leadership behaviors should be visible in every meeting? Joost, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat myself a little bit, but empathy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. And with that also active listening, really look, there's listening, right, and showing that you're listening and actually hearing what people say, following up on it, and doing stuff with that. So for me, there's technically 2, but those would be the top 2.
I don't know if it's a behavior, but I think consistency. So I think the one thing that I think is super underrated is knowing like what to expect from your like manager in terms of like mood, how they show up. It shouldn't be like today they're it's their off day, their mood day. Like I don't ask them questions, don't be around like yeah, they're in that mood again. Like I think it's just having this like inconsistency and not knowing what kind of leader you're going to get from day to day. I think that's like something that's like really important on getting that consistency right. But Frida, you were about to chime in. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I love authenticity. That's a good one, but also curiosity to actually be curious about what your employees or the people in the meeting want to contribute with would be my top.
I'll probably add something that I tell people is a fill in the blanks leadership style. So what I mean by that is, rather than giving our own answer, we ask people what they think. And you might find that actually they give you everything that you needed in terms of how you would approach something. And then if you need to, you just fill in the blanks, say, okay, my views are this. But if everyone's pretty much aligned, then you don't need to add your view. Sometimes leaders, we think we need to say something for the sake of saying it. And so I think the 2 powerful questions are, how would you approach it? And what do you think? And let it go. And there may be silence for a few minutes as people start to think and almost lean into that silence a little bit. I think those behaviors are really important in every meeting.
Nice. Cool. We have our one last question, which is which cue helps recall most in your context? Story, example, or question? Interesting. Which cue helps you recall most? Frida, what do you feel?
I would go with story, I think. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, a good story always creates the curiosity and engagement, I would say.
Joost?
Yeah, I would say the same, and at the same time, I would say a story is often an example, right? So
yeah,
for sure. Right? Yeah,
they're a bit intertwined. Yeah,
it's an example dressed in a nice coat or something like that.
Yeah.
I'd say example. It's a bit like the earlier question. What examples do you have to manufacture hands-on learning? I think people can immediately relate to something when they can see a reference point or a benchmark or a way to apply it. So I think examples are great. You can have as many theories as you want, which I think we're also guilty of, really fancy frameworks in L&D, But I think the more we can show how it's applied, I think the better.
These were such great answers on some really lovely questions. Thank you, everyone. And now we have our last segment, which is called Pass the Question. So our previous question, or ask a question to the panel and then let them pass a new question to the. So sorry, it's my moment here where I'm like, okay, come back to brain. So our last question from our last panel was, if you could pick one song to describe the state of L&D right now, what would it be? I think, Saad, you had something in your back pocket, right?
Oh, I was going to give a politically correct answer, but then I realized I'm just going to be authentically me, based on what Frida was saying. So I'm a big R&B fan, and there's a song called Folded by Kehlani, which is so cool. And there's 2 lyrics in there. She says I know it's cold outside, but it's not frozen. Come and find me while the door's still open. Now, obviously, she's talking about relationships there, but I think in terms of being cold outside, like when we talk about AI and, is it really going to cause a big upheaval? Are we going to lose the role of L&D? Is L&D going to be reduced considerably? It may be cold, and these things are cyclical though, but it's not frozen, right? So let's embrace like the moment a little bit. There are opportunities with AI as well as risks. And a bit about doors being open. We talk a lot about L&D getting a seat at the table, but I want to talk about doors. I think we close the door on ourselves. Sometimes when we get FaceTime with the CEO, we get asked, okay, and so what do you think the priority should be? And we go straight into learning modes about, I think we should create an onboarding program, a leadership development program. But the door that was open for us there was to say, I think as a business, we're facing a lot of trust issues in the marketplace. I think we're facing a lot of competition. We're trying to grow in Italy, in the Italian market, but we don't have enough people there. Maybe we could recruit and do an onboarding program. So I think often forget about tables. I think there's doors that we need to open a lot more and walk through.
And to build upon that song then said, I would add Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, an old 80s ballad, bringing like we can build this dream together, standing strong together. So that would be my addition to that one.
Joost, is there a song that comes to your mind? Oh, there you go. Come on up.
Yeah. Mine, I had to think about Pharrell Williams' Happy. I think most of us know the song. And this goes a bit into the measurement part that we talked earlier about, right? I think partly for very good reasons, we focus a lot on our participants in training sessions happy, right? Did they have a good time? And I think, the next step for all of us is to see, are they not just happy, but are they also learning something and changing their behavior? And how do we measure that? So that will be my song.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, and then for our next question is, who would you like to see on the panel next time? So all of us L&D nerds here, especially us on this panel, who would be interesting for you to hear from? Who are some top voices you would like to hear more from?
So Lisa, I heard you mention earlier in the call Cathy Moore.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of her work and her one-pager. So it would be if she's joining the next one, I'll definitely be joining in.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to have the perspective of, we mentioned the door to the CEO, for example. It would be interesting to have a CEO on the panel and hear their view on what learning could bring.
I love that one. I'd recommend Keith Keating, who published the book on the Trusted Learning Advisor. I think what I love about him beyond his speciality and expertise is he's so endearing, and he's an example of a great leader. He's very inclusive. I had invited him to do a panel with me, and he made me feel so inclusive, because normally I ask the questions, and he made me feel so included, and he's so passionate, and he's just so authentic that I would love to have to suggest to him to be on a panel.
I love this. Yeah, I also was thinking about a CFO. It's so interesting because it's like a lot of where your budget lays, obviously, is like with the chief financial officer. There's a lot of things that get cut because there's not a relationship or grading understanding. It depends how far you are apart from them and how much they understand like what's trying to be achieved in the organization and how much learning really supports that or makes that achievable. I thought that would be really fun. We at Mentimeter have a pretty great CFO. So Georg, it's not about you. Awesome. So please like keep on adding what you would like to see in our future panels. Really, thank you so much. Thank you so much, every single one of you, for giving a lot of your knowledge and experience, and that means all of you in this audience. There's so much here that I'm a bit blind, so I was like trying to read everything as much as I can, and it was being very careful. But I know this is definitely a session that I come back to just to look at your inputs. So thank you very much. It was definitely worth my time. Great. So we will say goodbye for now and look out for our next L&D forum. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Bye.